This is Hallicrafters Rehabs. Welcome back. This is again not a Hallicrafters receiver. It's the finishing.
Louis, maintain level 270, show 61.
It's the finish of the rather simple restoration of my dad's aircraft, long wave and FM/AM portable, made in Japan with 14 transistors. Air bands are not that common in portables anymore. There's one out there for $300. The manufacturer escapes me right now. It's had two names, which is multi-band, and they include an air band, but there's not many that do that, and they're just not as popular. The band is not as popular anymore for the average listener, and is not as useful as it used to be for pilots. Back in my dad's flying days, they were very popular. And the reason for that is, well, you can see 14 transistors is great for a receiver, but how many more would it take for a transceiver that's handheld? In fact, they didn't. If they had handheld transceivers, well, they did, but they were extremely expensive. And so most people would keep an airband portable. My dad had at least three. I've got another one around here I want to restore. Because in the airplane, and sometimes I get these notifications on my phone because I subscribe to Flight Radar 24. And they'll squawk. If a radio has communications problem, an aircraft has communications problem, they'll squawk 7600, which is the little ID transmitter that they have on every radio that identifies to the radar which aircraft they're looking at on the radar by the 4-digit number that your little transmitter on the may not be little, but the transmitter on your aircraft is transmitting. So if you set it to 1200, it means you're flying visual. If you set it to some other number, it's because you've been told by the tower or whoever to squawk that number when you checked in, and so they can keep track of where you are. And if you switch it to 7600, that means that you're having radio communications problems. But these days, pilots carry around with them handheld transceivers on the aircraft band, so they can just dial in whatever channel they need to communicate with the tower. It won't help with navigation if they've lost navigation radios. So then the other number that comes through on my watch is 7700, which is a general emergency. And that's all I can do for them. I pray for that, because 7700 means they've got to land their plane right away. So these bands are not that popular anymore, but it's fun listening to it. You were listening here to Atlanta Center, and we don't have this big antenna that's able to see over the horizon at VHF all the way to Atlanta. It's a part of a repeater network, and the network they may have the transmitter probably in Greensboro, and they have another one in Charlotte, and then they'll have another, I should say, repeater. There's a repeater in Greensboro, maybe one in Charlotte, maybe one.
Washington Delta 2221, 34 for Patricia.
And so they'll be located geographically so that if you're tuning into this frequency, you're in this region of the air traffic control, of Atlanta Center, and you're flying through. You're not. This is not approach, and it's not departure. It's trying to use air terminology. I'm not a pilot, but it's just been a kind of an interest of mine. I've seen every episode of Air Disaster. Okay. So, at any rate, this radio traffic is AM. It is not FM. Now, why is that? Well, one, you don't need the fidelity of music, that's for one thing. But the other thing is also a less receiver and transmitter capability, we'll say, is easier to project over distances in AM mode than FM mode for this purpose. And there's another aspect to that. There's no AGC, automatic gain control, AVC for you AM band restorers. And so, stronger the signal, the louder the signal. Is that a good or bad? It's great in an airplane with the noise of an engine, the vibration and everything inside an airplane of a typical prop that a pilot is, a private pilot is using for recreation or whatever, or even a commercial. Volume control is not important. Communications and clarity of communications, that's important. So they don't bother with an AGC circuit. So
1288, American 731, good day.
and see that was a strong signal, and it was loud, and the weak signals are weak, and that's okay because you're only trying to hear the repeater, and you're only trying to speak to the repeater, and the repeater has to hear you, and so it's also picking up anything out there and repeating it. So they needed, this is also VHF, so we can turn that down. This is also VHF, so that it's pretty much line of sight. Although when you're at 30,000 feet, you've got a lot longer line of sight than you do down here on our little on the Earth, let's just say. So all in all, it's a fits the purpose for air communications very well. Now, fixing this was pretty easy, and we'll go through that just in a second. Okay, it's electronically back together and working. The first thing was the batteries had gone dead. I guess they were just old cheap batteries or something. So we'll take this out here and show you. There's not much to see really. This area was tricky because there's a lot of force associated with it, and even now it's not totally tight. I have to be kind of ginger with it because the screw is kind of gone in, and I could anchor it with Loctite or something like that, but I'd rather not. I'd rather just to be careful with the antenna, knowing what's that looseness is in the screw, and it's biting into plastic, so you get the idea how that can be a problem. It was totally broke in the plastic below, and it took me a couple of 3 tries to get enough JB weld in there to where this is now a totally solid down here, and will withstand the kind of force it was designed to do. Changed out these safety, they're probably okay, but since I'm here, I put in new safety capacitors. I found that they are light on the solder, and they're light So there were a lot of connections that if you just put too much on it, they kind of came loose. So I had to be watch everything and make sure it got in. This had to be redesigned. There's a bracket here that holds this in, and the exact replacement size is just not going to be available. So I put in an 80 volt versus a 10 volt, which would have been plenty, but unfortunately it's a size problem when you do that. And so I had to kind of redesign around there to get that done. Besides, I decided I would use West Florida this time. It's been a long time since I've used them, and bless their hearts, they need a little business, I'm sure. Okay, AC wise, it works as well. Right now it's on AC, I'm not going to turn it on. In fact, I'm going to put it back together, put these covers back in and the cables back where they belong. And then I was told, I'll just put this right here. I was told that lanolin is a good material for renewing leather. So by a friend of mine up in Winston-Salem that does a lot of restorations of artwork and old things and things like that. So we'll give that a shot and see how that works. So we'll come back in a little while and see what the final product looks like. Okay, so that pretty much wraps this up. It's in great shape now. It has a little, when you rotate it, I notice there's a spring action and it locks into 45-degree angles. This is now working, except this last piece seems to be kind of stuck. So we're not going to try and break things by making it work. But it's working beautifully. It's been some time since my last video. I did get part of it. By the way, I did test this old capacitor, and my capacitor leakage tester just doesn't work well for 3,300 microfarads. So I just put an ohm meter on it, and it measured 17 megohms, which is probably would still work without you really noticing anything, and we're probably talking about micro amps of AC leakage through that. But still, it was turning into, like all resistors do, it was turning into a resistor, albeit slowly, because it's been decades since it had been used. And you could still, well, I wouldn't recommend it. Anyway, so I did replace that. And so it's ready to go. And I enjoy listening. But I don't, probably will never fly, because it's enough right now. I'm ready to take my test. And I actually study these books. I don't just try and learn what the right answer is. I want to learn the whole concept as well as the right answer, and why the wrong answers are wrong if necessary, and things like that. So that's what I've been doing there, and then we're hopefully going to be able to get that shop going pretty soon. And we're looking forward to that, but we really need a ham fest. I don't want to, maybe I'll have to get something off of eBay just to keep me doing something, but I'm really ready for that HT37. I'm not in good shape for trying to do that from here. And so we'll keep you up to date on it. So this is Hallicrafters Rehabs. Thanks for the new subscribers, and for watching.